Hey guys, so this is going to be my first YouTube video. I'm still testing the waters of YouTube, and I'm still exactly figuring out what my name is going to be. But I'm like in between Stealth Master Noah or something relating to Assassin's Creed. All I know is that this is going to be an Assassin's Creed designated channel. This is because I don't believe that I'm qualified or I necessarily have the interest to talk about other video game franchises, as Assassin's Creed is essentially like the only video game franchise that I really care about. I've played others, like of course I like Skyrim. I play other CODs. I played Mario. I played most Nintendo games. However, when it comes down to it, Assassin's Creed is my favorite franchise. I even read the books. Like, not even most fans have done that. So for today, we will be doing the most recent tier list, including Valhalla. And I'm going to briefly speak about each game to the best of my ability. And this is not going to have any cuts. I do know how to edit videos, and if I start to see interest in my videos, I will put more effort into the production value. But for now, I'm just going to do this in one take. So bear with me. Okay, so you may see some other ones on here, like Freedom Cry, and I've kind of cropped out some other ones, like the Chronicles games, which I haven't played. I have absolutely no desire to play those games. But essentially, I'm going to just speak about them. Assassin's Creed 1 is not on here. Oh, there it is. Never mind. You see, this is what I'm talking about. New YouTuber. Okay, so we're going to start with Assassin's Creed 1. So, what do I think of Assassin's Creed 1? It was actually the first Assassin's Creed I played, but I did not play it when it came out. I think 2007. I didn't play it back then. I played it in like 2011. So, yeah. And at that time, I'm just for reference, I'm 21. I'm graduating college this year, so I'm getting older. And when I played this game initially, I was like in grade school. Okay, so what do I think about Assassin's Creed 1? So, undoubtedly, AC1 is integral to the franchise. It set up the lore, the underlying universe, and it's just very important. Forgetting about the actual game itself, I don't think you can put it in D tier. I think that's just disrespectful, as all these other games wouldn't exist without it. You got to put some respect on Assassin's Creed 1. But in terms of the actual game itself, let's start with the story. I think it's pretty good. I think Altair's he's a good assassin. He's the OG. What can you say? I think that the story in which he gets betrayed by his leader is very good. I think that the assassin's missions where you go to different cities was very well done. Like, for instance, I think you go to Acre, you go to Jerusalem, and you go to Damascus, which we saw in AC2, but we haven't really seen since then, where they've pretty much made catered cities devoted to specific assassins. You could argue that they did it sort of in like AC3 and, of course, in the newer games. But I don't know, like, it seemed like the assassinations themselves were just much more thematic events. You went to a new location to do an assassination. That was essentially why you were there. Compare that to like newer games where you're not in that location to assassinate people. I mean, to be honest, the newer games don't have much an emphasis on assassinations, but I digress. But in terms of the gameplay, it's the worst. Nothing more to say. This may just because of time, but to be honest, like the next iteration, Assassin's Creed 2, was just better in every way. So, with that in mind, I am going to put Assassin's Creed in B tier. I think that's fair. I don't think it's too generous. I don't think it's too harsh. So, on to the next one. Assassin's Creed 2. Okay, so Assassin's Creed 2, if I were to describe it in one word, it's amazing. Arguably the best setting in the franchise. I still don't think it's been surpassed. Obviously, Ezio's amazing. The best protagonist. The best story. Like, what more is there to say? I'm not even going to spend as much time on this. Essentially, But if I were to talk about it in more detail, for instance, the character development that we saw with this game, where Ezio went from a very naive, sort of lustful young kid to an assassin that had morals and principles. Pretty amazing stuff. The different cities, Florence, Venice, they're all amazing, especially Venice. I highly recommend that you get this game, the remastered version. I think you can get it for consoles and PC. Venice looks amazing. Like, I still think Venice looks unreal. Like, Assassin's Creed 2 is just amazing. So, honestly, no doubt in my mind, gotta go S tier. I think Assassin's Creed 2 is one of the greatest games of all time. And that's not just me saying this as a fan. Like, I think it is fair to put this in the top 50 games of all time. Like, it's a classic game. Like, what more is there to say? So now we have Brotherhood. And Brotherhood. Okay, this is going to be kind of controversial. But I don't like this game as much as other people say. I still think that it's definitely above a B tier, 100%. But in some ways, it just sort of felt like an iteration on the second game. There wasn't as much character development here. I mean, obviously, I think it takes place in a shorter period of time compared to Assassin's Creed 2 that took place like from his birth to his adulthood. And I think Brotherhood only takes place over the course of a few years. But I don't know. It just didn't grip me as much, to be honest. I like Rome. I think Brotherhood is very atmospheric. But so is pretty much every Assassin's Creed game. But I don't know. I think in some ways it was a bit of a downgrade from Assassin's Creed 2. Having one city, Rome, and sure, it was kind of big at the time. But there's just certain elements of it that aren't that great, to be honest. I think it's very overhyped. A lot of people think that this is the greatest Assassin's Creed game in the franchise. And I just think that's wrong. Obviously, you're entitled to your own opinions. What I'm saying is so subjective, but yeah, I'm honestly going to put Assassin's Creed Brotherhood in B tier. I think it's on a similar level to Assassin's Creed 1, if not slightly worse. Revelations. So, I actually only played Revelations kind of recently, within the past 3 years. Okay, let's go story first, and then we'll go gameplay and maybe setting. The story. I thought the story in Revelations is amazing. Ezio's an old man in this, or he's middle-aged. And there's just a certain earnestness to him at this point that I hadn't really seen with the past two Ezio games. I'll give a good comparison. It's like in Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows, like the comparison between Harry Potter's character in that book compared to, like, I don't know, the Chamber of Secrets. There was such a big period of time between those two novels. I see it the same way here. Ezio's older. He has more experience. He's more cynical. I think that it's amazing in that regard. So, and then we have, let me think. In terms of the gameplay, there was the hook thing. Sorry, I can't remember the exact name of it. That was pretty cool. But to be honest, like, if we're talking about direct, differences in gameplay, probably like the least difference between sequels, and definitely its weakest suit. Like, it doesn't really bring anything new, and I do not consider the tower defense game to be like a new gameplay feature, as it's just trash, to be honest. Like, it shouldn't even be in the game. Like, a lot of people say, like, we'll get into in a bit, but people say that Odyssey, is not a good Assassin's Creed game as it has a bunch of these, like, new mechanics, but those mechanics are, like, actually fun compared to stuff like the tower defense game, which is just fucking dog shit. And then the setting, I actually really like Constantinople. I think it was the first real game that, went into more of a, I don't know, oriental setting. And I thought it was really cool. Turkey's just a pretty, I I don't know. There's more, media that's coming out. Like I just watched a show called what is it? The Fall of Constantinople. That was really cool, and it's a pretty unexplored, the Ottoman Empire, but I just thought it was a pretty cool setting, and it made sense, and it really tied up the pretty much from Assassin's Creed 1 to this game. It connected them in a really intelligent way, you know. I really liked it. I think Revelations is A tier. Okay, Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 3. I think Assassin's Creed 3 is a very divisive game. Okay, going with the story, Assassin's Creed 3 has a very weak first act. Essentially, the first 8 hours of it is a tutorial in many ways. Like, for instance, the game starts in England and starts with Haytham coming to America, which I thought was pretty cool, and how they made that seem like a big voyage, because at the time it was a pretty big voyage. But from the time of Haytham to the introduction of Connor's character as a child till his eventual, training as an assassin, it's still a tutorial, and that's like 8 hours into the game. Like they're still introducing new mechanics, and it's not like I could forgive it if it had a lot of mechanics, but it was still introducing fundamental control schemes like 7 hours into the game. And it was really holding your hand, and which really pissed me off, to be honest. The assassinations in the game are actually pretty good, though. Another thing I like about Assassin's Creed 3 is that I would say it's the most embedded into its historical setting of all the other games. You're essentially directly involved in historical events, like the Boston Massacre, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, a bunch of these, like, American Revolutionary Wars, like a lot of things. And a lot of the other games, like, they took place in a setting and you met historical characters, but you weren't directly involved in historical events. And it still hasn't really been done since then. And I thought that was really cool. Gameplay. I think AC3 has amazing gameplay. I think its parkour is very good. It's not as good as like the more interactive parkours of either Unity or like the older games that, there's more button presses and it wasn't as mindless, but it was still pretty good. The combat's amazing. It's very visceral, and I think it suits Connor, who's like a Native American and uses a tomahawk. But at the same time, it's very elegant, like an assassin is. I thought it was a very, I'll give you an example. Assassin's Creed 3 feels like a ruthless assassin. Well, something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey just feels like a ruthless warrior. There's a difference. So they managed to bridge that gap between the two, which I thought was really good. And the setting. I think the setting was decent. It's kind of boring. I didn't like any of the cities in the game. And I don't know. Honestly, it's sort of mid. So I'm going to put it B tier. Assassin's Creed 4. Okay, so I'd say this is another divisive game. Some people love this game. But I would say that if you're not into the naval gameplay, this is a pretty shitty Assassin's Creed game. The story was decent, and I kind of disagree with a lot of what people saying that it's not a good Assassin's Creed game, is you only really become an assassin near the end, but it is essentially an Assassin's Creed game where you're a person looking from the outside in to the assassins, which it was an interesting perspective which hadn't really been explored yet. So I'm not going to say that it's not, lore relevant. But in terms of the story, I think Connor is a pretty decent protagonist. He's funny, but like in a different way to Ezio. That's more lowbrow humor. Like Connor's just more of a gives zero fucks about anything. But I don't know, like the setting's okay. The story's okay. I'm gonna be honest. I skipped a lot of cutscenes in this game, which I usually don't do. So I was actually not as enthralled by this story as some others were, to be honest. Gameplay. I do not like naval combat. I sort of like it in Odyssey, but I don't like it in this game. Like, I think Assassin's Creed games are not meant to be ship games. I don't know why they carry this mechanic into pretty much every game, like, after this game. I don't know. They should really just get rid of it. Like, it's not a ship game. I don't know why they do it. I think it's stupid. It doesn't fit the fundamentals of the game. Like, obviously, this is a very divisive opinion, but you can disagree with me. And then the setting, the Caribbean's decent. It's very pretty. The problem is that its location. I've always been in the camp where I like dense cities, and like Havana's just seriously lacking. And I don't know. Like, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this game. I mean, I think I'm gonna put in B tier. Now we're gonna have Assassin's Creed Rogue. I haven't played this game that much. I have beat it though, but it was a while ago. I'm replaying again on my Switch, but it's essentially Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Part 2, but its story's different. You're a Templar, and I actually do think that this game is slightly better than 4. I like the setting better. Being a Canadian, there's not many open world games that are set in Canada. And this game has settings in like Quebec and Halifax, which is pretty cool. Like, I'm not going to lie. But that's about it. So I'm going to say it's slightly better than Black Flag. I'm going to put in B tier. Origins. No, sorry. We got Unity. Unity next. Assassin's Creed Unity. The story of this game. The story's okay. I thought that the cutscenes looked very good. Like, yeah, we'll get into that afterwards. But story-wise, Arnaud's he's decent. He's kind of like a French Ezio, but maybe a bit more like of a depressive. The whole like Romeo and Juliet story it's decent, I guess. But at the same time, it's sort of weird because like they're raised as brother and sister, so he's essentially like trying to fuck his sister the whole game, which is like nobody really talks about it, but it's kind of weird, to be honest. And I thought that a big problem I had with this game's story is I didn't know who the villain was. Now that can work in Assassin's Creed games because it's always been about secret societies and stuff, and you can like develop a villain without directly giving away its identity, and it can still work. But the problem with this game is that it like essentially like tried to use character development of its main villain through his cronies, but it ended up really not working. I did not know who I was fighting against. I almost felt like the Brotherhood was more of an antagonist than the Templars in this game, which was definitely not the intention. Because essentially, like, Arnaud is like trying to rebel against the Brotherhood, as he believes that, the Templars aren't all bad because Elise is a Templar, and they pretty much cast him out because of it. And then there's Bellic who wants him to, cast out Elise because he hates Templars too, which I don't know. Like, to be honest, I think Unity, people don't really talk about this as much, might have the worst story in the entire franchise. I absolutely hate this story. I do not like it at all. I think it was a complete failure. I think it's dog shit. Gameplay. I think in terms of gameplay and setting, I think this game has been reoppressed in recent times as kind of goated. And I sort of agree. Objectively, the parkour is just the best. It's amazing. Nothing more to say. The combat is hit or miss. When it works, I think it's really good, but it doesn't work most of the time. Like, for instance, there'll be this time when I'll be attacking two enemies, and I'll be in a kill animation of one of them, and the other one will fucking kill me while I'm doing it, and I can't do shit about it. That really pisses me off. The stealth is okay. I think that the cover system is really clunky and doesn't work half the time, and I don't know if they can actually see me. Like, for instance, there's this mission where you're trying to stealth your way into Elise's room, and one of them is that you hide behind like a pool table or something, and the guard was at a vantage point that it looked like you could 100% see me, but they couldn't. So I don't know, it wasn't great in some ways, but honestly, just because of how good the parkour is, its gameplay is pretty great, and the setting, I really like the setting. But I'm not so sure if it's because it's Paris or just because it's the first real game that attempted to make a city feel like a city. In some ways, the city in this game is the most lively city in any video game of all time. The crowds in this game are amazing. Like, nothing compares to it. Not even Rockstar games. The problem is that they're buggy and make the game laggy. If they were to pretty much go back to this game with the new gen consoles and perfect a lot of the shit in it, maybe put it in a new setting that's more bustling, I think you might have one of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion. But Unity was sort of ahead of its time, but at the same time couldn't live up to its own ambitions. I'm going to put Unity in C tier. Syndicate. Syndicate came a year after Unity, and Unity was pretty much the first Assassin's Creed game that got poorly received. Assassin's Creed 3 had some poor reception, but overall people liked it. But Unity was like, people shat on that game. It was like the same way that people shit on Cyberpunk now because of how buggy it is. Like, Unity was that, but 2014. So Syndicate comes out and sort of is similar to Unity. It has kind of similar mechanics, but it's also sort of different. So in terms of the story, I don't like the protagonist. I think Jacob is kind of annoying. I think that I actually don't mind the villain in this game, though. I'll give it that. A lot of people have said that he's like kind of too generic, but I think Stark is decent. I think that this game, something that people don't really speak about, is that it's self-aware in that it's ridiculous. Okay, a lot of the games, the other Assassin's Creed games, kind of take themselves too seriously, but this game like knows that it's kind of stupid. And in that regard, I can't really, hate on it for kind of being ridiculous in some ways. For instance, how the villain like will twirl his mustache and play the, piano, like shit you see in a James Bond movie. It kind of works. Usually it wouldn't work if this game had too much of a serious tone, but it's lighthearted tone. It sort of works, to be honest. However, I don't think it works with the protagonist. I think, I don't know. I think the villains is decent, but not the protagonist. I think that they don't really build up the people that you assassinate enough, which is very important for these games. The thing I do like about this game's story is that it's very structured. You're essentially assassinating every part of Starrick's, the machine of his Templar order. You're attacking the railway. You're attacking, the people that run the hospitals, which I thought was really interesting. Like, it was very institutionalized in that regard, and it made sense. Gameplay. I think Syndicate, with the exception of its parkour and its combat, Syndicate's like gameplay's amazing. Its black box assassinations are really good. I especially like the one where you go into the Tower of London or the hospital, and there's like different ways that you can, assassinate the different targets. I thought it was really good. Like, Unity also had something similar to this, but it wasn't as good as Syndicate in my opinion. Also, just in general, like, the gameplay of Syndicate's much tighter than Unity. it takes away a bit of your player agency. Like, for instance, you can't actually jump in this game, which is just ridiculous. But at the same time, it's much tighter. Unity was very buggy and clunky and didn't really do what you wanted it to do like half the time. But this game, even though it takes away some of your, player agency, it's a much tighter game overall. And then the setting. I do like the setting. The problem is, and this kind of goes back to my gripes with the narrative, is that it doesn't have the right tone. It went for a comedic tone, and I really don't think it should have gone for a comedic tone. I think that this game was just executed like pretty poorly. I thought the gameplay was decent, but I thought it should have gone, for a more grimy, gritty tone. I think it would have been received way better. I don't know why they went for the super lighthearted tone. It just didn't go well with the setting. It's like, if they overall went for like a Victorian London setting that was like kind of lighthearted, I think it would have worked. But some parts of the city of London are very like dark and depressing, despite the game itself being sort of lighthearted. I don't know. It was almost like two people worked on the same game. But I'm actually going to put Syndicate in B tier. Origins. So I'm actually replaying Origins right now, and I'll speak about this in a bit when I finish it again, as I had some issues with the story initially, but a lot of my issues that I had before are kind of being redressed now. So going back to it, I think Bayek's amazing. I love Bayek. I think I like Bayek equally to Ezio. I think that he's a very different character, but he's much more human. Ezio is like a superhero, He's very likable, but Bayek is like a person. And in that regard, like, there's a very human quality to him that I haven't really seen in the other protagonists. Like, for instance, those initial cutscenes with him and his son Khemu. Sorry, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but Khemu, whatever. And like, you can just see how much he loves his son and the way that he interacts with Aya and his hatred for the Order of Ancients. I don't know, he just has a lot more range than the other characters. That, like, for instance, look at Jacob. He never takes anything seriously. Ezio is always up to the task, but at the same time, Ezio has more depth than the other ones, but he also is a bit limited. And then Connor has no range at all, so he's the exact opposite. So Bayek's just amazing. The story, I think the first act is very strong. I think the second act is kind of weak. The part where you're just like assassinating the scarab, the hyena, and those ones. Like, after you met with Cleopatra and you kind of establish what you're going to be doing, it's kind of boring, because like the idea is that you're supposed to just be doing side quests between them. And but I don't know, they don't really develop, and this is kind of similar to my issues with Syndicate. They don't really develop the characters that you're assassinating, which is very important in a game. And this is something that Assassin's Creed 1 is actually kind of good. Essentially, they devote hours to just one person that you're assassinating, and that's what the game should be about. It's like an assassination has to mean something. And if I don't care about the villain, or if I don't have some hatred for them, it doesn't hit the same. Sure, the gameplay might be fun, but that like intrinsic motivation isn't there. And then the ending of Origins was pretty cool. Like, to be honest, there was a lot of fan service in this game. Like that part where he takes a bird beak and he puts it in the sand, and you see the Assassin's Creed, logo, which was pretty cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I really didn't like the Aya sections though, where like they just randomly takes you out to. I just didn't seem that necessary. Like, I'm not playing the game for Aya. I don't really give a shit in general. I just dislike her. I think she's kind of annoying. The DLC for this game, I haven't actually played it, but I've watched playthroughs. So I'm not sure if I'm super qualified to speak on that. But from what I've seen, Hidden Ones pretty much fleshes out like the actual like structure and building up of the precursors to the assassins. But yeah, in terms of the gameplay, of all the three new games in like I'm gonna call it a mythological trilogy. I actually like the gameplay in this the best. It's sort of simple, but at the same time, it's very satisfying. It there's just it's kind of a problem with Odyssey. The reality is that I don't play these games as an RPG, despite the new ones being RPGs. The reality is that I'm only gonna play them one type of way. I'm not gonna play them as like a guy who just goes around like not stealthing or whatever and using big blades. Like I'm not gonna do that. I'll play a better hack and slash game. I'll play God of War if I want to play games like that. I'm not gonna play Assassin's Creed, like a hack and slash game. I'm gonna stealth it, and that means that most of these RPG systems, I'm just simply not gonna use them. If it like advances the stealth, it's one thing, but yeah, I'm just telling you that right now. And maybe people can agree with me. I use the bow and arrow sometimes, but at the same time, I don't really want to. Like, I like the blow darts from the older games, or, the Phantom Blade from AC Unity, but I'm only going to stealth them. That's what Assassin's Creed is. It's an assassin. Assassins don't... It's even in the name itself. You kill in the dark. You don't kill in the light. It defeats the purpose of being a secret society. It doesn't make sense. And so in that regard, I think the RPG systems are kind of weak, but I do like the gameplay. I think the gameplay loop in this game is pretty strong. I have a motivation to keep exploring so that I can either like upgrade my weapons, or I can buy new weapons, or I can like, for instance, upgrade my health, stuff like that. I thought it was pretty good. And I like how certain animals are attached to like certain upgrades. Yeah, it's decent. Like, to be honest, none of the newer games have even hold a candle to the older games gameplay, especially Unity. But yeah, it's okay. And then the setting. Ancient Egypt is amazing. That's all I'm gonna say. Although I still don't think it's super relevant. Like, it's a great setting for Assassin's Creed. Is like, I don't really think of open deserts as like good Assassin's Creed locations. I'm more into like very dense cities, but I don't know. It's so great that it works. That's all I can say. Like, there's something very mesmerizing about walking in the sand, and the game's graphics are amazing. Like, they look so good. So I'm gonna put Origins, and personally, this is one of my favorite games in the franchise. I'm gonna put it at A. Now we have Odyssey. Okay, so this is a bit divisive. I hated this game when I first played it. I played maybe 20 hours of it, and I didn't pick it up for like a year and a half. I did not like it at all. It just was kind of boring. And then I picked it up again this year, and I think I've put in almost 200 hours into this game, which is like the most hours I've put into any Assassin's Creed game. That may just because of Odyssey being such a massive game, but also I do generally like it. I would never put that much hours into games I wouldn't enjoy, even if it is a big RPG that requires that amount of hours. The story's shit. No, nothing more to say. It's garbage. Okay, like it's probably worse than Unity, because at least Unity's relevant to Assassin's Creed, but it's shit. Assassin's Creed. Now the setting, I do like the setting. When I was a young child, I would read a bunch of books about Greek mythology, and I was always interested in ancient Greece. I have Greek friends that tell me about like what it's like in Athens, so I like the setting. But it's okay. And then the gameplay is definitely better than Origins, but its stealth is decent. This is I think the stealth in Odyssey is pretty good. Like, Origins is kind of lacking. It's okay, but like, if you devote all your upgrade points to stealth, like, you can do some cool shit in this game. Also, the problem with Origins stealth is that it has like literally 2 kill animations, but Odyssey has some dope ass stealth animations. Like probably some of the most stealth animations in the whole game. Like for instance, in Black Flag, there's like maybe one or two stealth animations. Obviously, Unity has a lot, but Odyssey has probably the second most amount of stealth kill animations in the entire franchise. And people don't really think of this game as like a stealth game, which is a weird, like an underrated part of this game. So I'm going to put this in B tier. And then Valhalla. Okay, so this is the most recent game I've played. I do not like this game. I haven't actually heard that many people give opinions on it, because I don't think that many people have even beat this game. It is just so long. It's very long. Like, even if you're rushing this game, like, it's still going to take you, like, 90 hours to, like, beat the game, which is really fucking long, to be honest. Because, like, Origins, like, if you just play the main quest pretty much and, like, a few side quests, you can finish in, like, 30, 40 hours. I think Odyssey, like, a bit more. But 90 hours to finish the main quest? Kind of ridiculous. Like, that's too long. And that's, like, without really doing any side quests. Like, if you're a completionist, this game's going to take you, like, 150 hours. Like, kind of crazy. The story. I think the first act of this game was really good. When I first started playing this game, I thought it was amazing. I was calling all my friends who were Assassin's Creed fans, like, yo, it's finally a return to form for the series. Like, it's actually relevant to Assassins. Like, it's amazing. Like, Norway's kind of cool. And that, like, introduction to England sort of dope. But then you get to the part where you just go to these different regions and you do the same shit where you, like, do a few favors for some kind of king or lord or whatever. And it's ridiculous. There is 4 or 5 hour sections, like, for instance, East Anglia to whatever his name is. The fact that I can't even remember these characters' names just shows you how memorable some of the characters in this game are. The only one I can, like, side characters I remember, like Sigurd and Ivar the Boneless. But, like, in East Anglia, like, that one character, like, he dies at the end, but, like, essentially, you're trying to find your brother Sigurd as he's captured by Folke, and, like, still, like, half near the game, but they like, you spent 4 or 5 hours with it, and this character ultimately in the overall narrative serves, like, the purpose of helping you in, like, 1 or 2 battles. Like, kind of useless. Like, why? I don't care. It's filler. Most of this, literally 80% of this game is filler. And I can't really say that about the other ones. I think Odyssey has a decent amount of filler. I don't think Origins has. If you just talk about the main quest itself, there's no filler. But the actual main quest of Valhalla is mostly filler. And people are like, and the whole part about this game is that, oh, there is no side quest. You know, those are just, like, side activities, and it's all main quest. But no, like, the main quests feel like side quests, which is kind of ridiculous. That's not, like, what? Gameplay. I don't like the gameplay in this game. I think all the weapons kind of feel the same, to be honest. There's different enemy types, but honestly, like, it's kind of easy. Like, you can kill them all pretty easily. Archery is kind of OP in this game, which kind of defeats the purpose of a lot of things. And here's the thing. The big part about this game and the marketing was that, oh, the return of stealth, the return of social stealth. Social stealth is dog shit. I don't care what anybody tells you. It is trash, okay? It's not good. Like, the only time it's even relevant is in these distrust areas. But you're better off just, like, hiding in bushes or just killing all the guards. Like, there was never a time where I felt that I needed to actually do social stealth, like in the older ones, where it actually made sense to hide in crowds. Like, there's not enough crowds in this game for there to be social stealth. You know, you sit on a chair or whatever, but the guards still see you. Like, it's kind of BS. And the raiding and stuff is so repetitive. That's just the main issue with this game's mechanics. It is the most repetitive game in the series. It is so fucking repetitive. The setting. I don't like the setting either. Norway was kind of cool, but I think England's just kind of dog shit. And like I've said this in some of my posts on Reddit I've made, I said that, you know, the cities in this game are kind of trash, and everybody's like, oh, that's just because, you know, it was kind of underpopulated at the time, you know, 9th century England. Then why would you set an Assassin's Creed game in 9th century England knowing that the cities were dog shit? Okay? Like, you need good cities for Assassin's Creed games. I don't care what you say, even in these modern games, like, you need good cities. And Origins Alexandria's amazing. So is Memphis. Athens was a pretty cool city. Jorvik? What is that? Winchester? What the fuck is that? I think Valhalla, in my opinion, is all the worst parts of Odyssey with none of the good parts of Origins. And it's essentially a very self-indulgent game that is also very buggy, if I haven't spoken about that yet. It is so buggy. Every time I play this game, I get a game-breaking bug. I think this game is more broken than Unity. Unity had funny visual glitches and like has some frame rate issues, but Valhalla has all that, plus actual game-breaking bugs. Like a big thing people have been talking about ever since they added this update, the Yule Festival. When you load into the game, you're drunk. And it's funny at first, but it gets really fucking annoying. Or I'll get something where my hawk or whatever, the crow, I won't be able to spawn him. So in closing, I just don't like this game. I'm very disappointed I spent $80 this game. I want my money back. And that's the first time I've ever said that about an Assassin's Creed game. If I'm being honest, like the next Assassin's Creed game, like better blow me away. I want to return to form. Like I really think that this was a bad game. Like I do not like this game. I don't think it's a D tier game, but as no Assassin's Creed game is a D tier game, but C tier. Okay, so I think I've laid out the games that I like. Sorry if this whole thing seems a bit buggy and there's been some awkward pauses, but I'm still figuring out this whole YouTube thing. But thank you for tuning in. I'll be posting more videos soon. Peace out.